Hello, my name is Ben, and today I'll be demonstrating setting up a vSphere cluster and Serengeti. This video is for people that know next to nothing about vSphere, and I'll explain the components as I go along. You are expected to have either a license or a trial copy of vSphere to follow along. This includes vCenter Server, so if you have a licensed copy, you are going to need to purchase that separately. If you have the trial, you're already set. I'll assume in the screencast that you have already downloaded and installed ESXi from my VMware onto at least one machine. It's pretty straightforward. It's just like an operating system. So let's get started. All right, let's start by connecting to our host. In order to do this, we have to download the client. This is fairly straightforward. There's an IP address given by your host on its main screen, and it says go here to download the client, or something like that. So I'm going to open up Internet Explorer because for some reason Firefox doesn't work for me. And I'm going to go to the IP address that was given. As you can see, I've already gone here before. Continue to the website, even though the certificate is not good because you know where the machine is. And we're going to click Download vSphere Client. You're going to run this, and it's going to install the client. Now that you have your client installed, we're going to run the client. You can see there are three boxes of information requested: the IP address, the username, and the password. The IP address is the same one that you went to. The username will be root, and the password is what you set when you were installing ESXi. Now you can log in. And congratulations, you are connected to your very own cloud, sort of. You can make VMs on top of this host. In the next section, I'll show you how to set up the vCenter server in a VM on your host and add more hosts to that server. Now you have one host set up, but you want to either install Serengeti or connect more hosts together. In order to do this, you need vCenter Server. You can either install vCenter Server as an independent application on another machine running Windows 7, or you can install it as a virtual machine on top of one of your hosts. This comes at a cost of RAM, however, it removes the need to have a separate machine. In order to install the server on your host, you must first download the OVA from your My VMware page. It will be labeled as vCenter Server Appliance.ova. With the OVA downloaded, you can go to File, Deploy OVF Template, select the OVA, click through, choose a name, a host, choose Thin Provision, and then you can complete and it will deploy the server. With the server deployed, you can turn it on, go to the console, and when you see this, you're ready to continue. We are going to follow these instructions and open a web browser. Go to the address it specifies. This is your server's IP, followed by port 5480. That's the web services port. You will be prompted to log in. Your username is root, and the default password is VMware. On your first login, a EULA will pop up. You should accept it, and then this wizard will show up. Configure with default settings, and then click through and it will automatically set up your server for you. With your server now running, you can connect to it in the same way in which you would connect to your host. Close your host, reopen the client, selecting your server's IP, username root, password VMware. And you are connected to your server. As you can see, I already have my server set up with a Hadoop cluster running on it. Now we need to set up the server. First, create a data center. Name it what you like, and then you can either add a host or create a cluster. Since you are setting up Serengeti, you will need to create a cluster. While a data center is just like a folder, a cluster actually spreads out work evenly across any host that is inside of it, essentially acting as a single logical machine. You can add a host, put in the IP address of the host, and the credentials that you would use to log in through the client. Now that we have our server set up, we can install Serengeti. First, download the OVA from the Serengeti project's website, and you will need a VMware account in order to do this. We're going to deploy it just like we did the server with the Deploy OVF wizard. Just select Serengeti, click through, make sure that you have a cluster or a resource pool inside of a cluster as your resource. With the Serengeti installation complete, you can now power on the management server if it's not already. Go to console, and the password will be given at the top. Log in with credentials Serengeti and that password, and then run the command that they give at the top in order to change the password. You'll need to create a password that is easily rememberable, as you need it every time you log into the server to create a new cluster or modify the current cluster. With your password set up, it's now time to download the command line interface. You can do this by going to your server's IP/CLI. This is not a secure website, so it's HTTP your IP address/CLI. You'll see this, download CLI, and unzip it to the folder of choosing. With the command line interface downloaded, let's run it. You can do this from the command line, Java jar, and then the name of the jar, Serengeti-CLI. You can then connect to your Serengeti server by using the IP on port 8080. It's very important to remember to specify that this is the host. Another important note is that there are 2 dashes, not just one. You'll be prompted for a username, Serengeti, and a password that you set. You're now connected to your server. Before we can start making clusters, there's still one more step. We have to make sure our data stores are both able to be read by Serengeti and known by Serengeti. First, go to inventory, choose data stores and data clusters. You could also do Control-Shift-D. Make sure that none of your data stores have any special characters. If 2 hosts had a data store that had the same name when they were added to the server, one of them will be renamed to something along the lines of data store 1 parentheses 1. The parentheses cannot be read by Serengeti and causes all sorts of issues, so rename them. Now that vSphere is aware of all of your data stores, it's time to make sure Serengeti knows. First, list them all by doing data store list detail. Here you can see the name, the type, and the name in vSphere. In order to remove one, you would say data store delete name DS1. You're going to need to delete the initial data store. In order to add new ones, you would type data store add name DS1 spec data store 1, where spec is the name in vSphere, and type local. You can also have type shared. You now have your Serengeti management server set up. You can create a cluster at this point. In order to create a cluster, you need to use the command cluster create. Name specifies the name of the cluster that you will be creating. I will go into more detail on how to create clusters in another video. Thank you for joining me, and have an excellent time with your new toy.